This is a Stipple Wild video, so if you don't have Stipple Wild, stick around to the end of the video and we'll tell you how to get a free copy. Like and subscribe. Alright, so I'm going to go over the new sample size slider that is in the dot and brush menu and was added mid-August 2020. So I'm going to launch Stipple. Whoops. I'm going to relaunch Stipple. And then I'm going to go, and on this menu, I'm just going to select paint mode. And then I'm going to just launch it. Okay, so as more and more effect channels get used, and as larger and larger dot shapes get used, Stipple slows down. And I'll show you what I mean by this, which is just right now we're only using one slot, one channel, which is the color map, and we have our dot size all the way to the right. And if I go and hit fill right now, you'll see that it's going to take about 10 seconds to complete this task. So as you add more and more channels, it's going to take longer and longer, and as you make the dot shape bigger and bigger, it's going to take longer and longer. And since there's no preview built into Stipple, sometimes that just gets in the way of your creativity, having to wait a minute for Stipple to load when you're just trying to figure out if it's going to look good or not. However, okay, so now on the sample size, on the brush and dot menu, there's a new slider called sample size, and it's locked by default, but if you hit the unlock button, and now I'm going to pull it all the way to the left. Okay, so how Stipple works is it's sampling your source images based on a certain dot radius, and it's sampling all the pixels within that radius, and that radius is based on the average dot size between the min and the max dot size set by the dot size slider. So as the min and max go up, or as the max goes up, the average size gets bigger and bigger, and then all of a sudden Stipple has to sample 100, hundreds of pixels per dot. So what sample size does is it allows you to control how big that sample size dot is. So basically how many pixels get sampled. And now if you pull this all the way to the left, and now I hit fill, you'll see that took 0.6 seconds. So it saves a bunch of time. However, you also see that the effect isn't quite as it's not as smooth as the one with the default setting. So this effect can be used both ways. So say if I take this dot size and put it about there, and now I'm going to go to the grid menu, and I'm going to put this at about 120, and now I hit fill. And now this is going to take longer than it usually would to process, and it's not going to look better than it usually would. It's going to look kind of smoother than it usually would. So I didn't test these settings, so bear with me. Okay, so let's compare this to just how it would look at the default setting, and I can get back to default just by hitting the lock icon. And now if I hit fill, whereas this one took 9 seconds, default it's going to take a minute. It's going to take about 1.2 seconds, and you can see the difference. Now, default, it's much crisper with the the sample size boosted larger than it should be by default. You can see it's much smoother. And now let's go ahead and make that sample size at the smallest size and hit fill again. And now we can compare all three. Okay, so a lot of you would just say, why am I going to use this effect? And the truth is, it just speeds things up. You'll find that stuff like the rotate map is really slow. If you put this effect on, it doesn't even affect the rotate map too much. It doesn't affect how smooth it is. I mean, it all gets applied to every channel, gets just blanket, gets applied this new sample size. But just keep in mind, this is a way to speed things up. You might never use it at all. Thanks for watching.